So today, me and Sonny are here with Connor. Connor, if you want to give a brief description about yourself.
I like politics and playing guitar.
There you go. And so we just wanted to, go over some of the, recent events with, news. And one of the big things that came out recently was, I believe it was yesterday, was the Elon Musk backing out a Twitter deal. So essentially what happened is Elon Musk came out and said that Twitter was withholding information about its bots and spam accounts, which is why he's backing out of the deal. And Twitter has vowed to sue Elon Musk so that the deal goes through. And what are your guys' overall thoughts with, the whole Twitter, Elon Musk?
I think ultimately it's going to be a settlement.
So you think Elon's still going to he's still going to get it?
Yeah. I think either Twitter's going to sue him and they're either going to force him to buy it or they're going to settle in courts because a lot of cases like this end in settlements.
Yeah,
which would mean he would end up getting it for cheaper, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you think that essentially with this, is it really that big of a deal for the Twitter spam bots and spam accounts that it would make you back out of a deal?
I don't think he has. I don't know. I think yes, because people can use spam bots for tons of different things.
Yeah.
So knowing specifically where they're from, how many there are in the demographics, and if they aren't being entirely truthful about it, then there could be an argument there. I am not entirely, that's not my wheelhouse, but seeing how bots can be used regularly for political reasons, for campaigns like that, people have specifically their bots for saving.
Yeah, when Joe Biden had half of his Twitter followers were fake.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
There's
that
troll bots as well.
Yeah.
So I think I feel like it could be in that wheelhouse personally.
I mean, definitely. I mean, I really thought Twitter was going to be happy and they're going to be like, take it. Because, the whole freedom of speech thing, I thought they were going to be like, yes, we get our platform back. But I guess they really want to sell it. I was really surprised about that.
They have a fiduciary duty to try to get the best deal possible. They could be sued by their investors if they didn't sue Elon.
Exactly.
Oh. Okay.
Elon offered them such a high price so that they were forced to take it or else be accused of
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
Would the investors blame Twitter executives for not making sure the deal went through, for not giving him information on the bots?
Yeah, could they sue him for that too?
Could they blame them, their own employees for that?
They might have a case against the board. That would be that fiduciary duty type thing. I don't even know if the word is fiduciary, but I want Succession. But I suspect that Elon constructed the deal to give him this backdoor in case he got cold feet later, or maybe that was part of his plan all along, was to make a bunch of noise about a deal and then walk it all the way up to the point where he could still back out and distract from the part where he sold a bunch of his stock in Tesla at its high point in order to buy Twitter.
That's a lot of profit.
That's what he told the board and his investors. I just need to take this money out to do this really cool thing.
I think
you should be excited about the cool thing I'm going to do with the money and not the fact that I'm cashing out.
I think the whole thing about him buying Twitter was a legitimate reason.
That, but also I think he has investors helping him buy it along. I don't think
it's not just him. It was there's numerous people like the Saudi prince and so
loans and whatnot.
I think personally I think what he was doing was admirable. Is that the word? Admirable?
Admirable.
Because of, the issues with Twitter. Twitter was an echo chamber for the left. And you can't really, have a platform and silence the other side just because they have different opinions, And that's essentially what it was. And it was known for numerous instances of just people on the left getting banned and but then with the right,
Truth Social also open
up?
More.
I'm trying to say more on the right, left and right getting banned. It was more the right. What were you saying?
Should Truth Social also open up to everybody?
100%.
100%. Yeah, I think all social media
platforms should have a sort of duty to have all speech as much as possible.
I mean, I think obviously if you're if there's hate speech out there in some instances, if you're talking about we should meet up and be KKK members and kill black people, obviously, stuff like that there should be action taken against your platform.
No, I would like to see it because I would like to know who's saying it, so I could be like, I don't need to even go near you.
But even then, I mean, I think that kind of place and misinformation could be.
But also, it's the
issue.
internet. A tweet like that could be someone having telling a joke, a really terrible joke amongst their friends, as opposed to just.
Well,
being,
that's essentially what the review board would have to look at. Was
Yeah.
this a joke? Was this serious? Was this person actually crazy and a white supremacist? You know, something like that. But overall, when you have, you know, people getting silenced for their opinions on like guns, for example, and them just blatantly stating facts about an argument, and it's just like they get banned because of how they responded some way to someone.
I'd have to
It's
see
just
some
kinda-
examples of that, because when the right wing tells you that they are being unfairly silenced on Twitter, they don't mention that most of the speech that they're being silenced for is hate speech, that there is perfectly legitimate right wing speech.
I
that
mean,
can
did you watch?
be, you know,
there was a
said-
whole thing about
well, no,
a
it's
bunch of
the-
truckers getting banned for tweeting. I don't know if it was truckers per se, but like there was a point in time where if you just tweeted out "learn to code," you would just get banned.
Yeah,
and it would
learn to
learn
code. And it was a big
I
thing.
can't
If
remember-
you
yeah.
watch the Joe Rogan podcast with Tim Pool and the Twitter executives, I think it was Jack Dorsey and then one of the
Lawyers,
one of the top lawyers, they literally kept saying exactly what you said. Well, we need a specific example, and then he would give a specific example, and then she'd be like, yeah, well, we need another example that's anecdotal or whatever, you know, and then he would give another example, and it was just a circle of him giving example after example of, you know, people on the right being banned for literally BS, and one of the things was learn to code.
Well, it didn't. Learn to code wasn't like a left wing or a right thing. It's just I think
It was just like
people
a
on the-
response to...
Yeah, like if it didn't matter if you had just tweeted out at that time "learn to code," you would just get banned.
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
And there's numerous
strange.
There's just numerous instances where the point is freedom of speech is definitely limited. I mean, we can even I'm not gonna go into that. But the point is it's definitely there. Like they definitely limit you on what you can say and what you can post. And we saw that. I mean, after Elon announced the deal, magically all these accounts got unbanned. All these right-leaning accounts got unbanned just out of nowhere. You know, follower accounts started dropping. All the spam accounts, all the fake accounts, people started losing followers, gaining followers randomly.
I mean, the problem with that is correlation not causation. At the end of the day, we don't really know what it is
Because Twitter won't
definitely
give out
speculate. Yeah,
I mean, but that's essentially why Twitter. Elon backed out of the deal because he said like you're not giving me usable or significant information about the spam bots and the fake accounts. So he was like, because you're not giving me this information, which is a big part of the platform, considering Joe Biden, half of his Twitter followers were fake. He had 22 million followers. He only had
a lot of the
11 million.
major accounts have large portions of the accounts that follow them fake.
Yeah.
But that's not simply because they're padding their follower accounts. That's because those bots are trying to get information about that user because they're big. So I don't know, that particular instance, I don't know if it's really illustrative of some sort of like left-wing bias that you might be implying there.
Yeah,
I think there's problems with the Twitter moderation, obviously, but at the same time, hate speech should be banned. And other forms of speech
I agree
because
with
it
you.
Stifles communication and limits freedom of speech and creates a toxic atmosphere. And that's you want to have as much
healthy
vibrancy
conversation
of
and-
opinion and stuff as possible.
I mean, but when you
within
have
limits.
executives coming out and basically saying the same thing, like we don't want freedom of speech, which was
I don't think it's in their interest to have total freedom of speech. I could say this, having worked with platforms, it stifles the amount of new audience members that they can bring in when the new audience member comes in and sees that it's full of a bunch of people saying learn to code. They don't know what that's about. It seems like it's passive aggressive. It's not constructive. So I can see why they banned that, even though I might disagree with it on the margin. And it's just a really complicated problem, and that's why that's some of the reason why you have to have a variety of different platforms with different moderation policies. That Truth Social is a competitor, and it's only a competitor insofar as it has different moderation policies.
I mean,
Yeah.
look, to an extent, but I mean, even then, like the issue for me is just that, you know, when it comes to like right-leaning, you know, creators, they would not be able to get the same amount of views and or status that the left-leaning gets because
Well, they're not as popular.
I mean, you can say that, but that's just not true. I mean, like for example,
How
YouTube.
can you
I think that it's
comfortably
definitely
say that?
literally less popular.
No,
I mean, okay,
don't-
for let me give an
if there
example.
is censorship for right on Twitter, then it becomes hard to 100% be like, yeah, the 100% like left is just more popular. I think it's here, obviously. Yeah.
There's just a smaller audience for like
I
right
mean,
wing.
okay, look, the point I was
online.
making was Demolition Ranch is a prime example, right? This it's
yeah.
it's a right leaning. It's not necessarily political, but it's a channel about guns and experimenting with guns and all kinds of stuff like that. YouTube constantly like shafts, the monetization on that. They don't allow monetization on guns for whatever reason, because I guess it's dangerous
They're
and
being
scary.
pressured by the advertisers who
Yeah.
don't want their advertising to end up on gun programs, and YouTube doesn't have granular control over what ads appear where because it's sold on large-scale programmatic advertising markets. So the only way that they can moderate that is by demonetizing entire accounts.
Well, that's what I'm saying is essentially, I know that guns is more like a controversial thing, but I remember watching a podcast with the guy who runs Demolition Ranch, and he was just saying, like, I wonder what my views would really be like if, I wasn't getting, demonetized and kind of like buffered by, YouTube. Because essentially they do limit you, and it's a known thing, especially if you look at gun channels as a whole on YouTube. A lot of them do get limited. And Roman Atwood, it was between Roman Atwood and Matt, the guy who runs Demolition Ranch, and they were talking about it. And he was just like, Roman Atwood, who, Smile More, always talks about it. It's super upbeat guy, never really talks about guns, but he noticed every time his views would take a significant drop when there was a gun in the video. And it wasn't necessarily that it was in the thumbnail, but YouTube would specifically see like, oh, there's a gun in this video. We're going to limit the reach on this video, which is the whole point I was making.
I think that's
that platforms do actually make an effort.
It could
to.
also be that it just wasn't as interesting of a video for his audience.
That's
due
fair.
part
I mean,
because
it
of the
is,
gun in the
YouTube,
but
video.
again,
like the-
nobody's going to know. And
Yeah, a big
that's-
way YouTube works is that like if you start a channel, you need to show that whatever it is you're starting, especially if it's like you're just starting a channel, like make sure everything you're going to be covering is within that channel, because the moment you diverge from that, it's going to be a lot harder to grasp and keep getting views because you're already
within
built-
that algorithm.
Yeah, because you've already built an audience.
I mean,
specifically
that
for
is definitely a possibility, but I mean, looking at it with Twitter and them specifically not handing over information and them,
right.
definitely there's some stuff that, Twitter and a bunch of other people were trying to like, not Twitter, Elon, were trying to look into with the coding and all different kinds of stuff and like what they were doing. Because again, like the day that Elon Musk, and like within that week that he announced that he was going to buy the platform, there's like drastic changes, like I said, of all of a sudden people magically got him banned. All of a sudden people's follower accounts like went up and down. So like right-leaning people all of a sudden gained a ton of followers. People on the left
People
magically
thought
just...
that Elon getting Twitter was going to mean that there were going to be more right-wing voices on Twitter, so they started going and re-following people on Twitter.
I mean,
I think it's both.
I think
100%,
it's a combination
and that
of
may point to
multiple
like some
things,
disagreement within like Twitter upper management over the direction of the company or whatnot.
Mhm.
I just stick on the idea that Elon is going to be the solution to these problems for anybody, because the real problem is that the free market is making these decisions, that these platforms are trying to, expand their audience and deliver ads and provide a valuable product to the ad marketer, the marketing organizations, in the form of user attention. And the only way to alter that situation is it's not to bring in another capitalist, it's to have user control over the platforms and representation in the platforms.
So you get to see what you want to see.
Yeah,
in your
and
timeline.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And
think,
the framework for that is up for debate.
That I also think, sort of in combination of like the advertising thing on YouTube, I think there should be sort of like an underworld category where advertisers get to like, obviously there would have to be structural changes, I guess, within YouTube, but like if advertisers want to advertise on a gun channel, they could be like, yeah, 100%, like who cares?
Well, I mean, I've noticed that because I've used Google Ads, and they like specifically make it impossible to find a channel unless you put in the link. So, like for example, if you wanted to, like, let's say Coleon Noir, or like let's say someone on the right, like Ben Shapiro, if you were to like Google or like in Google Ads where you can like specifically place on certain channels, if you look up Ben Shapiro, exactly how the channel is spelled, it won't come up unless you put in the link. And that's happened to me like numerous times when I've done ads for people where they've like, oh, I want to target this specific audience, and I've like specifically looked up channel names, just how they're actually spelled, and it will not come up, and it'll say no channels available, and then I have to actually go to the channel, grab the link, and then put it on.
And that only happens with certain channels, or is that just their search engine being bad? Because YouTube search is pretty bad.
I mean, it could,
That's
like, again,
true.
Again,
That's true.
This is what I'm saying. It could be a bunch of different things, and honestly, unless you're suing them and you subpoena them, you're not going to actually know what is actually happening. But I mean, I'm just saying from my point of view, from other people's point of views, from all this kind of stuff of people saying I've been censored, and then you see that like Twitter executives are like, we don't want freedom of speech, and then all these accounts magically get unbanned when I'm just saying there's an argument to be made there.
I can't tell what in that right-wing grievance is apophena and what is actually real. Like, what is just like pattern recognition in feeling like you were being persecuted in your media choices just because the tool that you're looking to use to get to that media is imperfect. That might.
I mean,
be,
it's a possibility.
That's like a technical problem and not necessarily a political conspiracy. I don't think that the Twitter board is targeting right-wing media. It's targeting what it thinks it's hate speech, and that happens for some reason to be right-wing media. They're targeting things that they think
bias,
that it's the cause and effect. Like,
I mean, but you
there
can't blame
could be hate
everything
speech on the left, but for some reason there isn't. So, like, what quality of the left?
Oh, there's definitely like some
does that?
individual. How many examples? There's definitely individuals I've seen that have been like, let's blow up the Supreme Court. Don't do that, and they like didn't get banned at all.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. There was like plenty of like comedians who came out and people on the left, not even comedians. Remember the lady who like had like the severed Trump head and was all bloody, and she posted that on Twitter and she didn't get banned, but then all of a sudden January 6th rolls around and this is the thing of like how essentially remember there's people can say like death to Trump supporters and like I hate Trump and fuck Trump and I hope he dies, I hope he gets all this kind of stuff. You can say that kind of stuff, but then the minute it's against Joe Biden, you're getting banned for it. So I
think that dichotomy, is something that you'd really have a hard time showing.
Not necessarily,
with
but I mean,
large-scale
It was just
data.
have to find examples.
it's hard to
and many examples.
Yeah, I don't have again access to Twitter, so I can't look at all the accounts that they did ban for saying stuff like that. But I mean, again, when there's like major public figures that aren't getting banned for things like that, when the other side, when left and right both do it, but then only right gets punished, then it's kind of like, okay, you're biased, which is essentially my point. I'm an independent, so like both of them, but I'm just saying,
I just don't know why being biased is alone itself a criticism of the media.
Well, no, I'm
Obviously
saying
everybody's
it's biased. And
I don't know that's a negative thing too. Even
no,
mean,
my
I
point
think
is
being
that
biased
their
is a
bias
negative
would just
thing.
result in more bans from the right side because left hate speech was probably significantly different from right hate speech. So if you're
you
biased,
can't draw an equivalency between them.
yeah.
Those
So
are
if
fact.
you're already left leaning or very left biased, and like some of the things that they say, the right might interpret as hate speech as opposed to what, like, I guess if there's, how do I say this? Okay, so if left leaning people are saying, oh, death to X senator
Trump
or X
you know.
right individual, right political pundit or whatever, and people who are already working within Twitter see that and they're like agreeing with that, they might not necessarily be 100% objective and banning that person as opposed to a right-wing person saying that against.
I think the question that they're asking in their actions is not, do I agree with this, but is this conducive to a larger audience on the platform? And with those critiques of the Supreme Court, for instance, that seems to be conducive to a larger audience, they think, a more accepting audience, because a lot of people don't like the Supreme Court right now. They're reading the room, and that is not evidence of their political bias, but evidence of their need
User
for a
bias,
larger
I
audience.
guess.
I mean, but even then, I mean, like, there's numerous instances of
yeah.
fact checkers. Basically, I think I'd have to look up the article and show it to you, but where multiple like Facebook Meta, well now it's Meta, but they came out and like were saying that they kind of just they were blatantly biased and they weren't necessarily fact checking. They were just fact checking for the left, essentially, which was removing stuff that would be that would go against the narrative for the Democratic Party.
If the narrative is correct, and it's not necessarily the Democratic Party's narrative, because the Democratic Party is not a monolith, then you should be fact-checking for that narrative. Like, if
No, and essentially, what I'm saying is, like, if the right is posting something that contradicts what the left is saying, right, where they are showing
the
specific
question that
facts.
you're asking there is the left factually correct in their statement there? Like, for instance, when the CDC says that ivermectin is not a good approach, and the right says that's crazy, ivermectin is great, and then the platform goes and looks at all the ivermectin studies, and with their expertise, which
Right,
they
and it
do
basically
have,
comes
they
out
say
as,
that
like,
it's
inconclusive.
bullshit.
Yeah.
It's BS. They shut down the right
Well, that's
posts, but
again,
then that's
I
like censorship.
No,
Like,
I mean
yeah.
essentially, there's. I remember Colion Noir, who I've told you to look at multiple times. There was a specific example where he highlighted. This was like a year ago, so I don't remember the details specifically. But he highlighted something about guns, and so a fact-checking website that is like widely known and widely used.
Snopes?
It was no, I don't know that. Again, this is
Factcheck.com.
it was something where it was pretty it was around election time when Trump Biden, and they basically checked him saying he was wrong, and he went in and like looked at their sources, and he was like, I specifically said in my video that this specific article that you used to fact check me was wrong, and here's why, and yet you still went and then used that same article to fact check me and say that I was incorrect when I pointed out all the flaws in this article.
Is what you're mad about here the label fact checking as something
I'm
that seems
I'm
to
just
be
I'm not mad. I'm saying that
non-biased?
there's fact checkers that are specifically they are biased, and they will silence the right's views
I don't-
and facts.
Well, I don't think it's silencing, and the nature of discourse is that it can't not be biased. There is no such thing as like perfect realism there. You can approach it but never reach it. So the fact checkers come in with the notion that they're going to do their best to get to reality, but they're still going to approach it with the biases. And Colin Noir seems to be holding them to an absurd standard when he critiques them for disagreeing with him on the substance of the issue.
I mean, I think that if you're a fact checker, I think you should like look into the article, that instead of just being like, oh, this article says that he's wrong, when they didn't actually like check the article to be like, okay, what points are here, and stuff like
I mean,
that.
there's
think
also
fact
there's
checkers
issues
should
with
be
like
around.
good faith arguments.
I have
the
an
principle
article,
of
but you're not
charity.
gonna like it because of the source. So
Oh yeah, what?
Yeah.
No, go for it.
no.
Is
It's
it
a New York Post.
Post?
Yeah, it is. I was like, he's gonna be like that. Like, then I'm gonna have to read this entire article and then.
Oh, it's going to
go
be 2
through it.
paragraphs. It'll
Hey man,
go real fast.
NBC, Wall Street Journal, CNN. There's a few. So I mean,
There's a lot of problems with the mainstream news media, so-called.
Yeah.
Especially with the incentive structures that lead them to, underutilize long-form journalism and, not explain the issue in depth, but also not air like a proletariat view of the issue. They are looking at it from the perspective of upper middle class, generally white, college-educated journalists, and so most of the news media is fundamentally conservative. They're there to make money.
yeah,
So you can't trust them insofar as they do that, but you can trust them to a degree, and you can approach their articles with a degree of uncertainty, a grain of salt,
Yeah.
but still, looking for the truth in what they're trying to say and how they're trying to depict reality. That changes when you're looking at political reactionary news media like New York Post and Fox News and stuff like that.
same with
because-
CNN
yeah.
and.
I don't think CNN is reactionary. It might be biased, but it's
they're
not trying to.
Not only are they biased, they
depict a contrarian view of reality that is much farther removed